Welcome to the first annual event of Premium EU, which is a Horizon Europe project. I am just going to take you through the agenda for the day. We will start with an introduction to Premium EU from our project leader, Leo van Bissen. And then we go on to 3 presentations. First, the Human Migration Database, about social media and novel data sets or novel data sources, then regional development, the impact of migration policies, migration flows by age and education attainment. Then we take a short break to let in our panelists and to test it a little bit. And then they will discuss the core question, will migration fuel a better future for left behind regions? I will say welcome to our little impromptu studio. We are coming to you live from Danish Statistics Center. And we have set up this little analog studio in a quiet room. So you will see us shuffling back and forth a little bit, our speakers for the project here. But we're very, very happy to let you into our little research garage situation. And yes, we will start with Leo.
Thank you, Anne-Catherine. We have little time, and I am going to give you a short introduction to our project. What is the objective of Premium EU? We try to answer the following research question as given by the European Commission. How can European mobility, so defined as migration in the broadest sense, including international migration, internal migration, but also return migration or seasonal migration, and so on, how can mobility between countries and within countries, between regions, contribute to the development of vulnerable regions in Europe? Important and also challenging question. Well, our goal, given this question, is to build an evidence-based regional policy dashboard for local and regional policymakers that aims to provide policy tools to turn the benefits of the individual benefits of mobility into societal benefits for both sending and receiving regions. Well, talking about sending and receiving regions, indeed, the background of our project is how does mobility affect regional development? Well, if you look at the sort of the sending side of the migration link, migration has an effect both at the origin and the destination region. Look at the origin region, then we face questions like, well, migration may drain the origin region of talent. How can out-migrants, for instance, still contribute to the home region? What is the potential for return migration, or how to foster well-being in a declining region? These are examples of questions facing origin regions. If we look at the other side of the link, migrants may contribute to the socioeconomic development of the destination region, and we are seeking sort of ways to accomplish that. How to attract migrants to vulnerable regions is an important example of a question. How to create the regional conditions to reap the benefits of immigrants for the region. Examples of questions that come about in our project. Well, you may sense already that our project faces sort of 3 different sort of domains. It's, of course, mobility, and we have quite a few demographers in our team who are specialists on this domain of mobility and migration. We have regional development, and of course, the question of mobility influencing regional development is the key question. And in between our policies that may help to sort of create this link. So the 3 domains are key to what we are doing. To give you a flavor of the sort of things that we are developing, the starting point is, well, each region in Europe is different. And we will develop a regional typology based on migration profiles and regional development. And well, you may think of a sort of a matrix or a table like that, where regions are cross-classified by specific types of migration and specific regional development profiles. And each policymaker sort of engaging with this dashboard will find his or her region in this system. And this region is then characterized by a specific type of migration, a specific type of regional development. You may compare with these other types of regions, both sort of row-wise or column-wise in a sense. This is the first step. And then an important sort of ground layer of what we are doing is to look at demographic trends and projections for regions. And we are developing an international migration database, and we will hear more about that after my introduction. And we will estimate also subnational migration flows. And we will also engage with the future. We will look at international migration projections and scenarios, and also subnational projections and scenarios. What's in stock for the coming period for your region? So these are important sort of basic steps that we will follow. The other important domain of our dashboard is policies. We will collect a database of regional policies and link that to our typology. Think of it as follows. Here we have this table of our regions by the two typologies of migration and regional development. And we will collect in our database policies that will link to each of these different types. So for instance, if your region, the yellow cell, is in the yellow cell, then you may look at, well, what sort of policies have been developed for these types of regions. And this may inspire you to either follow them or adjust them or amend them for your own goals. And the link between these policies and the sort of the typologies of the regions is key to our project. Not only that, we also have a very important qualitative element, dimension in our project. We are interviewing migrants and stakeholders among European countries. And then you can see that similar to policies, we will have narratives from these interviews, and they also link to specific types of regions. And this may also be beneficial to what you are thinking in terms of, well, that you may think of in terms of policies to engage in. So this is a flavor of the sort of things that we will be doing. Okay, our team is, well, these are the following 10 partners from 9 different countries. And we have both demographers, migration experts, regional development and policy experts. So it's quite sort of a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary team that works together. We just had a consortium meeting the last 2 days here in Copenhagen, which was very fruitful. And we sort of bridge sort of the difference between the different disciplines in our team. Okay, that is a very short introduction to our project. I now give the floor to Maciej and Jisoo, and I think Jisoo is going to have the presentation. So Jisoo, may I invite you to come over? Yeah. Well.
Hello, everybody. I'm Maciej Dańko. I'm a data scientist from Max Planck Institute for Demographic Research. And Jisoo is also a research scientist and big data expert at Max Planck Institute for Demographic Research. So today we'd like to talk a bit about the data and data problems. So our target is the human migration database, leveraging social media and novel data sources.
All right, thank you, Maciej. So hi, everyone, I'm Jisoo, and let me maybe start the presentation by presenting you one of the pressing challenges that arises in dealing with migration studies. While traditional data sources like the administrative data and labor force survey complement each other well in providing trends, well, picture of trends and mobility flows, we still lack timely information about the present situation. So in a way, it's like waiting for the train that never arrives on time when we need it the most. Having a timely information is important when we are to understand the current trends, but also when we are to forecast flows or stocks of migration for the future. So today in this presentation, we propose and show you some of the works that have been done so far to address these issues of data in migration, while also leveraging and proposing novel data sources in migration. So yeah, now I'll pass back the microphone to Marce, who will walk us through the human migration database.
So let's first define what is migration. So migration is, according to the United Nations, entering or leaving the country by crossing a border, having been a usual resident of a country of origin, and staying or intending to stay in the country of destination for at least 1 year. But the data are not always perfect and follow this definition. So we also consider several types of migration data. So there are migration flows, which is the number of people changing the place of residence from one country to another in a specific time period. There are migration stocks, the number of people born in certain country but living in another country at specific time. And we also can consider the changes in migration stocks, that is a change in the number of people that born in specific country and live in another country, but in a specific time period. It must be noted that changes in migration stocks are not the same as migration flows, because also included the changes in births and deaths. So there are several sources of migration data. So one of the main sources are administrative data. So for example, there are censuses, population migration registers, border control data, administrative records such as from social health and insurance services. We have also surveys such as labor force surveys, different household surveys, and all the data are gathered by international organizations such as United Nations, Eurostat, OECD, or World Bank. However, we have also additional data sources like digital trace data. And digital trace data are data left behind by the people interacting with digital devices. And this data includes social media data, mobile phone data, and online search engine data like Wikipedia. At the bottom of this, there are academic research estimates using different statistical models that try to harmonize this data. So this project includes like Mimosa, TESIM, IMEM, QuantMig, FUME, and our Human Migration Database project. So Human Migration Database project is a synthetic, coordinated, publicly accessible migration database currently focusing on flows, which takes into account differences in data quality, definition, different sources, missing data, and it's based on the statistical modeling. So one of the main components of the Human Migration Database is a data quality assessment and collecting the definitions. So to do that, we use a metadata and data itself. Once we have the data quality assessment to go with coverage and migration data, we can build migration model, use them in migration model to produce some estimates of the flow, migration flows. So Human Migration Database focus on flows and uses the administrative data sources and labor force survey. And we have several goals related to the Premium EU project. So this is access the pattern of migration flows in a timely and consistent manner, use estimates of flows to understand the causes of migration flows, and the consequences for regional development. We also like to feed the work package 3 with flows estimate disaggregated by age and sex, and ultimately, this work would inform European Union migration policy. So let's talk a little bit more about data quality problems. So one of the main data quality problem is simply data availability. So, for example, we don't have information about the country of origin or a country of destination, or disaggregation by age or sex or different aspects. Another problem is a definition of migration itself, which the standard definition is, as I presented at the beginning, is according to the 12 months duration of stay or longer. And data doesn't look like that. So often doesn't look like that. Another problem is accuracy, which is dependent mainly on the system of data collection. So register seems to have better accuracy than servers, but registers also differ between each other. Like a Danish register is tended to be much better than the Polish register. There's also a problem of undercounting. Our problem of undercounting is related mainly to the registration problem of the migrants. And it's also related to the presence of sanctions data corrections, obligation for registrations, and retrospective corrections of the data. And the final problem is coverage, which is simply a problem of excluding certain population segments from the from data collections. To address all these issues, we we will develop here a Bayesian model, which is based on the previous work of IMEM project, and it has two layers. So it has a measurement error model, which is common for all data sources, or specific for all data sources. So each data source can have different, we can measure different accuracy, coverage, under configuration of state. We can use different data sources together using Nowok and Wilkins approach. And there's a second layer, which is predictive model, and this one is common for data sources, and it allows to address problem of missing data, capturing the time trends, including some random variables, as well as covariates like freedom of movement of workers. Our project is accompanied with the Shiny app. So it's a freely accessible Shiny application online that you can check assumptions about our models, check metadata, check data itself. As well, you can look at our estimates from the different perspectives, like a single flows between two countries, but also aggregated flows. There are different possibilities to plot these migrations. It also has the survey that you can provide your feedback. Do you like our estimates or like our app? So we will be very thankful for any comments. But here's an example of our estimates from the model, which is generated also by our app. So this is flows from Poland to Germany for different years. And we have also denoted different data quality problems. So the transparency denotes the accuracy. So the lower the transparency, the lower the accuracy. The bigger the point, the lower the undercounting problem. And the shape of the point denotes the definition of migrant via duration of stay. So for German data are denoted as blue points. And they are defined according to the 0 to 12 months definition of stay, which means that they are overcounted if we compare them to the ideal situation of definition for durations of stay for 12 months or longer. From the other side, the Polish data are defined for according to the permanent duration of stay and has huge deregistration problems. So these data are highly undercounted. And our model fits something between accounting for all these problems. And this is a pattern that we estimated. So the next data source, as I mentioned, are social media data. And in our mobility module, we focus on integrating social media data to analyze and forecast European mobility trends. And we use, and also we focus on the use of traditional sources and online surveys of social media to follow users to improve the accuracy of estimates.
All right, so here, for the sake of the presentation today, we'll focus on Facebook data here, but please keep in mind that we're also considering other sources of digital trace data. But of course, the Facebook data has its advantages due to its size and wide user base across demographic groups, including Instagram, as it is owned by the same company. So here we will show you some of the works that have been done so far in the past that show how Facebook data can be used to study migration and mobility. So the first thing on the list is to show you how measuring migration and mobility is possible using Facebook advertisement platform. So from Facebook, we're able to measure the number of expats. Here, for instance, we see how many users who used to live in the UK now live in New York City. Facebook then provides its estimated number of individuals under this category, as you can see in the screen here. Using this information, one of the studies estimates out migration from Puerto Rico in the months after the incidence of Hurricane Maria. The authors here find evidence to indicate that a 70% increase in the number of Puerto Rican migrants were observed in the US over the period of October 2017 to January 2018. And we observe here that the biggest increases were observed in states such as Florida, Pennsylvania, and New York. And there were disproportionately larger increases in the age group between 15 to 30 and men more than women. However, as Marcia mentioned at the beginning, using Facebook data poses challenges due to lack of representativeness, but also the data fluctuations that are unrelated to migration events. So to address here, the difference approach has been employed to estimate the percentage change in Puerto Rican migrants in the US post-hurricane incident. And this method compares the pre and post-event size of Puerto Rican migrants to the control group, filtering out the common changes. So this approach reveals a distinct increase in the Puerto Rican migrants to the US following the hurricane, which shows that the potential of social media data to monitor demographic indicators over time, particularly after a shock to understand large changes in population characteristics, where we would have to normally wait for a bit to obtain the official statistics. A different approach that can take place using Facebook is to measure the behavior through online survey. For instance, through Facebook advertisement platform, we can directly target specific subgroups of a population to be recruited as survey participants. So in this example, during COVID period, health, behavior, and attitude indicators have been collected. And here, notably, the issue of selection bias has been addressed here by employing post-stratification method, adjusting for demographic deviation using the Facebook's audience size estimates. So through this methodology, an accurate population inference can be achieved. Now the question arises regarding the validity of social media measures. While we've seen studies addressing limitations of novel data, another crucial aspect to consider is the need to assess the reliability, but also the consistency of these measures across different platforms and contexts. We might be looking at a distorted mirror of actual population, while indeed the reflection may be looking very much like reality. We would be gazing at an inaccurate portrayal. So the challenge lies in obtaining precise estimates of international migration, hindered by the absence of timely, comprehensive, and also inconsistency in the definitions and the measurements of migration across various countries. So to this direction, a Bayesian model integrates traditional survey from the labor force survey here with the Facebook data to enhance the accuracy in estimating migration stocks in the UK. Combining a measurement error model together with a theory-based model here, it adjusts for bias and coverage limitations, aligning the data with the definition provided by the UN. The methods here generates a probability distribution of, for migrant numbers, with the median serving as the point estimates. Now comparing the data with Facebook and the labor force survey and the model proposed here for European migrants in 2018 and 19, notable observations actually emerge. So here the Facebook data noted in blue show differences between 2018 and 19 due to an algorithm changes, while the labor force survey data exhibit a declining trend. The model estimated here surpasses the estimates provided by the labor force survey, where the model actually here addresses for definition discrepancies, bias, and the coverage issues. So yeah, expanding upon these prior researches, our aim is to evaluate how bias evolve over time by leveraging frequent online surveys recruited through targeted advertisement platforms. So this endeavor not only enhances our understanding of present trends, but also enables us to forecast future trajectories. Now I'll pass back the microphone to Marcia. Thank you.
So Facebook uses definition of migrant. They call migrant expats. So these are people that used to live in country X, but now they live in a different country. But the question is, can we consider this variable as a stocks? So actually, not really, because the stocks are defined via the country of birth, and here are just long-term migrants. We decided to use the stock differences in our approach because this will avoid this kind of bias. So next question is how the Facebook determines the location of the migrant. So it's not very clear, but from some Facebook metadata, we know that they use user IP address, self-disclosed location, some friendship networks, language or even common language for location, but are many unknown factors that we actually don't know. There are several Facebook data biases, similarly as for administration data. So one of them is definition of duration of stay, and for Facebook, it's clear that it not follows 12 months or longer. So we will use Facebook survey and probably Eurostat data to account for this bias. The next Facebook issue is accuracy, which is related to number of users per stratum, frequency of using Facebook per different strata, language implication problems, and all of this can be addressed either using Facebook metadata or Facebook survey and Facebook data itself. Another problem is undercounting. So this is a number of people, the people who are classified as non-migrants but by Facebook, but who are in fact are migrants. And our Facebook survey will address not only to the migrants, but also to all users, and we can capture this kind of bias. The fourth problem is the coverage, and it's very, so the problem lies on, we can say it easily like that this is a problem with representativeness of the Facebook data in comparison to the total population. And we will use Eurostat population estimates to account for that. So migration stocks. And the final problem is overcounting, which is mainly related to the duplicated or fake accounts on Facebook or people classified as migrants when they are actually not. And again, we use Facebook survey to account for this, but we also have some prior works of Francesco Rampazzo about this problem. Here is the graph showing the way how we'll deal with the different problems. So we assume that the Facebook data is representative for the Facebook users, but Facebook survey data is probably not. So we use the so we adjust first the Facebook survey data using Facebook data itself, and we can estimate some of the biases related mainly to accuracy and undercounting. Next, we'll use migration stock model or simply migration stock data to estimate the coverage of the Facebook data. And this way, this is a second set of the Facebook data biases. And altogether, this can be plugged into the Facebook data model, and we finally can estimate migration stock difference in estimates. So thank you very much. This is our work package 2 team at Max Planck. It includes me, Jisoo, and Emilio Zagheni. We collaborate with Francesco Rampazzo, Tom Taylor, who helps us collect the data, with Dilek, Andrea, and Arkadiusz Wiśniowski for work package 3. And also on the human migration database side, it includes except me, it includes also Arkadiusz Wiśniowski, our data lab, Domantas Yaslionis, Dimitri Zhdanov, and Emilio Zagheni. And we collaborate with Jakub Bijak and Franz Willikens. I'm giving floor to Peter. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much also for offering me the opportunity to be here in this great studio. It's a pity the audience can't see it. It's a really relaxing room. We can play darts, we can sit in our chairs, and we can relax a little bit. My name is Peter Meister Broekema. I'm from the University of Applied Sciences, Hans University of Applied Sciences in Groningen, the Netherlands. And I'm working in a research center that is focusing on the living environment. and especially for a professorship looking at the living environment in transition. So we focus on broad welfare issues and also the impact of demographic changes on especially rural regions within the Netherlands and also in Europe. Leo did a brilliant presentation and an introduction about the project, so I will not go into detail about that anymore. I will focus on a few elements from that project, basically, because what I am focusing on together with a lot of people in our consortium is to understand the impact of migration. And we call them mobilities for all kinds of reasons. One of them is a political reason. Migration has a certain, appeal, or, there's a certain connotation with migration. We'll talk about that later. And the other thing is that we really like to help policymakers to devise policies that create the most beneficial impact of these mobilities. I will also be leading a panel later at 11 o'clock, and then we're also going to talk with some policymakers about great examples they have on how to not only attract more people and make a region maybe more viable, but also what they can do if people leave the region. But is it detrimental, or is it possible to do something good actually, and maybe even improve regions? Well, I was saying Leo did a great job of introducing the Premium EU project, but I briefly wanted to go on into detail about some aspects of it. In general, and Leo made that clear, we have migrants. Migrants move from region A to region B. There are all kinds of factors for that, push factors. It could be something, people losing their job, could be something economical, could be something happening in the personal relationship of people. There could be a war going on, all kinds of things. They move to a different region. Pull factors, there could be an economic reason, but it could also be a family reason, other types of reason, people finding a job. So it's a real, difficult to really grasp that. And what is also difficult is to grasp the motives of those people. So Leo said this before. That is also one of the reasons why we do a lot of qualitative research on exactly those motives of migrants as well. Well, to complicate a little bit more, Leo touched upon that as well, is that if people move from one region to the other, this will have an impact on that region. I will tell something about impact later on, but for now, let's say that there is an effect if people move from one place to the other. People leave, so there are less people. Something happens within the relationships, maybe less jobs, etc. And the same goes for the region where they are moving to. And this is already really difficult to pinpoint. You see that a lot of impact has been defined as economic impact, which is also difficult to grasp, but still it's a little bit concrete. But if you move farther along, it becomes even more fuzzier and more difficult. So that's already a big challenge. Well, to complicate it a little bit more, we also decided to do something with policies. The title of my presentation was something with migration policies, so what the impact of migration policies is on the region, people moving. Well, a lot of research has already been carried out in the brilliant project DEMIG. Maybe some people from DEMIG project are also present today, but I think they really did a great job in not only looking at the numbers of people coming in and how this happens if you devise policies, but they also looked at basically deflection of taking care that people that knowledge that streams of mobilities were going somewhere else, so to diverge it. And they did a really great analysis on that. So you could actually see what the impact of a migration policy is on the mobility flows to a certain extent. Well, that has been carried out. What hasn't been carried out yet is looking at regional development policies. So that is where we come in. And that also makes it, like I said before, even fuzzier. So we look at impact. So we look at motives for migrants. We look at the regions, we look at the policies, and we try to find out what is related, because they're all related. But it's really a bit difficult who is related to what is related to what influences the one, what influences the other. So, for now, let's stick to that. Like I said, it's we really want to tackle this problem because we really believe that devising new policies or implementing existing policies somewhere else could have a really beneficial impact on regions. But to measure this, we have to face many issues, and that's not on a conceptual level, but also on a methodological level, and also a practical level. And I'd like to show you a little bit, what we've been doing in the last year, and also some ideas for the future. Well, let's start with the beginning. The title of my presentation. regional. Regional is already a contested concept. In a way, I on purpose chose this map because it doesn't show any boundaries. But a region is already difficult, and it's not only difficult to come up with regions. I mean, of course, you have some borders, and there are all kinds of nuts 1, 2, and 3 regions. But what is more important is also how people feel they are, if they are connected to a region, etc. But also the interconnections between different regions. Sometimes you see if regions are really close to each other, but there's a national border in between of them, they stick together somehow. So this has some effects on one region and also the other. And it's the same with policies that are being developed. If a policy is being developed in one region, it could have an effect on another region where you haven't thought of before. The second thing, what is regional development then? Development is also a really contested concept. Most of the people see it as economic. So there was always a top-down kind of policy making, like getting big companies in. You see that, I come from the Netherlands, we see it with, I don't know, for example, Amazon. Big companies coming in, create a lot of jobs. Every region is fighting to get those people on board, to get those companies on board, with the idea that there will be a lot of new jobs. These people bring money in, attract families, housing, etc., and then the region will flourish. But there are also other aspects on regional development, and only recently people have to start looking at that a little bit better than just focusing on the economics. And things like that are, for example, on the living environment. What is the impact of infrastructure, of housing, of all kinds of facilities? But also social aspects. What can we do to get people here? If they come here, are they protected enough? Is there any healthcare? Are there all kinds of policies in place to help them? Same with politics. Some regions are, let's say, more stable than others and have a long relationship with politics, which creates a really nice environment for people to come there or to do business, etc. And another aspect which is also more difficult to grasp is the cultural level. It makes a region attractive. The more facilities you have, the more museums you have, the more theaters you have, it does something to the living environment. It does something with the attractiveness of a region and also the development of that region. Then another one, and I did a lot of research on this. I always like to show this picture, what is impact? I think 20 years ago, this was impact. It was 2 cars hitting each other. It was a ball being kicked away. I often show a poster of that movie Deep Impact, which was about a comet hitting the Earth. So it was kind of a negative concept. But if you look at impact now, and that's, let's say in the last 15 years, it has become some really kind of fuzzy, but positively loaded concept. So people want to create impact. We also talk about impact a lot. And impact is seen as something really positive. And still nobody really knows what it is. There are loads and loads of kinds of impact. I just put on a few: academic, economic, cultural, knowledge economy, research, all kinds of stuff. I could go on forever about what types of impact there are. And that makes it also really difficult because there are 4 major problems with impact, basically. The first one is the chicken and the egg. So how is it possible to see, in our case, for example, with the regions, are people attracted to strong regions, or are those regions strong because they attract a lot of people and become bigger and bigger and better? So where does it start? What kicked it off, this movement? Chicken and egg problem. You often see this with impact. The other thing is, and that's closely related to it, is the attribution problem. We will talk about a policy mix later on a little bit more, but there isn't one policy. There is not one migration policy. And the DEMIC project I just introduced looked at more than 6,000 different types of policy changes to come up with an analysis. And with a regional development, as I just showed you, there are lots and lots of different policies. So how are they connected? And if you pick one out and you show the effect, is that true? Or is it maybe the combination of all these types of policies? I think it is. The third one is the international problem. And yeah, I said something about that before. If something happens in one side of the world or one side of Europe, this could have an effect on other regions as well. So is it the policy, or is it because a policy was created somewhere else? It makes it even harder to understand this. And the final thing, and maybe there are more problems with impact, but the final thing I'm going to talk about is the timeliness of impact. People agree impact is difficult, but people also agree that impact is normally longer term, so it comes after a while. And then in between, something else has happened as well. So can you actually contribute the I don't know, research or policy to the specific or expected impact or the impact you measured? That's really difficult. So loads and loads of issues there. Then another thing, which is also, of course, really difficult, and I said it before, we use mobilities because it's a little bit more neutral, but it's also really difficult how you frame or how you show migration. This is a really, I think it's a well-known example. This is showing migration coming from Africa and from Asia. And that gives a complete different picture than this type of migration, where we are focusing also on. We focus on both of them. This is showing how people moved in Europe since freedom of movement started in '68, and then the borders opened up more and more and more. And this is basically showing that people moved to different countries, lived there for a while, got back. And this is also migration. I think this type of migration is maybe more important than the other one, which is showing really a specific percentage of the migration going on in Europe. Migration policies, also difficult. I talked about the DEMIC project, and I told them that they've been looking at migration policy, so looking at numbers, so how many people migrate every year. And if I stated correctly, and if I read it correctly, those numbers are relatively stable. It's a certain percentage of the world population migrating internationally. And they also looked at selection. So what happens if countries come up with all kinds of policies, for example, focusing on highly skilled or lowly skilled laborers, putting visa in place, etc. So they've done a lot of research on that. But they also conclude that migration policies are not the only policies that impact migration. There's a lot of other stuff going on. And I touched upon it with rural or with regional development, but there are loads of policies on labor market, getting tax reductions in place, stuff like that. On education, if you have a great educational system, you might attract people, having children who want to get their children to better schools. Same with healthcare. If you have great healthcare, a lot of people maybe come because you are really well protected and it's easier to work a little bit longer, work-life balance, less stress. So it's all a really blurry, hazy type of policy mix. Same for welfare. And also for social protection. If you're protected a little bit better, and if there's a lot of stuff that's really important in the region that really allows you to live a better life, then you might come. So this might attract migrants or not, but it's not strictly a migration policy. So to unravel this a little bit, we have been looking at regional development policies. And as I told you before, most of the regional development policies have been focusing on economy mostly. And not only that, but they also looked at necessary and sufficient conditions. So this means, for example, if we think of policies, a policy is maybe something to I don't know, somehow nudge people to do something, but policies could also mean public investments, things like infrastructure, which is also important. So if we really want to dive into these regions, maybe we should also have a look, and I think we should, at those investments in infrastructure, in housing, etc., and then look at the other layer of policies that are used to nudge them and to change them a little bit. So big investments in infrastructure and the other ones as well. What we also notice, if we look at regional development, and we use the words also, I think Lea also mentioned rural development ones, it's often being identified with rural development. So regional development and rural development sometimes mean roughly the same. So it's all about, for example, in Europe, to make regions that are performing less, in the economic sense of the word, to make them even or more towards the average of the EU. So the EU is investing loads and loads of money in backwards or lagging behind or less performing regions, what if you call them rural regions. And that might also be a way forward to unravel and to disentangle these type of policies. And you could also have a look, for example, every region in Europe has to come up with a regional innovation strategy, which is showing their weaknesses and which is basically showing their strength, and then developing some kind of policy to maximize the strength from that region. And in unraveling this, it's really really clear that we should look at the policy mix of them. So we should look at the necessary and the essential, sufficient conditions. We should look at different types. I put regional development indicators there below, not only in economic, but also in demographic things, living environment, social, cultural, and also political. So if we have that broader picture, it's better to say something about impact migrants will have or mobilities will have on the leaving and sending region. So it's a difficult problem. So we've been tackling this from multiple angles, and we found some traces already. If you look at demography, we've been talking a lot about demography and migration in the presentation here before, which is great because it gives a much more refined image of, and also it's also easier for forecasting. And that really allows us to come up, and Leo talked about that as well, the typology of regions, to come up with different types of regions with different characteristics. And once we know that, we also know what kind of policies they have and how they are going to be or are successful or not. And there's also some other really interesting and exciting, actually, research from the OECD, which really did a really macroeconomic exercise. You should read the papers, it's really interesting. And they are saying, and they are showing that in general, if you have 10% more migrants in your region, this means that your GDP will go up with 0.15% for an average region and 0.36% for rural or lagging behind regions. And it's always difficult to grasp, okay, what does this mean? So they gave an example, and they are saying, for example, that in, I think it was some state in, I think it was Bavaria or Baden-Württemberg in Germany, that if 80,000 more migrants came in a certain year, then every person within that region would have more money to spend, let's say 300 or something like that a year to spend because of the influx of those people. But still, then we only know the economic consequence. We know people have a little bit more money, but what does this actually say? How are they going to spend it? Does this mean that the whole society changes, housing goes up? So there are a lot of more effects than just solely this number, but it's a trace. There are also some traces on living environment, that investment in infrastructure and housing is beneficial. We also found a really great article from Woods 2016, which is really focusing, for example, on the socio-cultural impacts of migrants, and then on a really local level, showing that there's just more availability of groceries, of shops, and that whole society looks different with more migrants in it, and that's also an impact. Well, some other traces, and this is just to maybe get a discussion going later on, but also just to show you that it's still difficult. On the one hand, on the left side, you see the European Innovation Scoreboard, which is basically ranking all the regions in Europe on their innovativeness. Green is an innovative leader. And you see the scale there down below. And on the other hand, on the right side, you have the population change in the, well, it's a few years ago, between 2011 and 2019. So if regions attracted more people or became larger in population or not. And you see that there are a lot of, well, basically they look roughly the same, the green and the bluish ones, not completely. But on some parts, for example, in Finland, it's totally not a clear picture. It's really innovative, it's an innovation leader, but a lot of the regions are declining. So it's really difficult to align those two. I mean, on a big case, they look similar, but they're not. And yeah, that's the interesting thing about this problem as well. Why? We found another thing, and the person who came up with this this correlation, she was saying, well, maybe I shouldn't use it because it implies something and we don't know what it is. So sorry for that, but I use it anyway, just to show you that there is something at stake here. And we looked at the Migrant Integration Policy Index, which is basically looking at all kinds of countries, seeing how they do on migration. Do people have a chance to go up? Do they have a chance on nationality? What kind of policies are in place? And they rank different countries. And it's really interesting because if we link all these 8 different elements, if we link it to the European Innovation Scoreboard, something comes out, something like a significant correlation. And so there is something there, but we don't know exactly what it is. So it's really difficult to show this and it's difficult to draw any conclusions. But yeah, there has to be something. This is just what I want to point out. So the past year, we found a lot of traces indicating to something, and we're just circling around a big issue, I think. So to conclude, so what are we going to do now? In the introductory talk, we also talked a little bit about this. In our part of the part, I'm leading together with a few other people from my university and also from other universities. We're going to look at the regions. So we're going to select regions, maybe based and probably based on in and out mobilities, diaspora, levels of development. And then we look at them at specific times to see how they are developing. We're also going to collect and analyze lots of data on regional development policies, maybe with the EU structural funds, national/regional policies, and then we're going to try to link them to the different development indicators to see what comes out of this. Is it possible? Are there any patterns? That's the big question for now. On the other hand, it's also still important to understand the motives of people who are moving. So that is also why the other people from the more qualitative interview components of the project come in. Because if you want to devise new policies, if you want to help policymakers coming up with new policies, you also need to know what people need, what people expect. Do they expect anything? We had some results during the last 2 days here in Copenhagen, that sometimes people just move to a region. They want to make a lot of money working 14 hours a day for a couple of years and then moving back. So they don't expect anything. They just want to work, want to save up money and go back. Could be something. But there could be other types of migrants who actually want to get something out of it. They expect something. And maybe lifestyle migrants moving to Spain want to have certain facilities. Well, if you know that, then you can devise better policies. So in the end, we're going to develop, test and evaluate these new policies and best practices in different policy labs throughout Europe. Also at the Week of the Regions in Brussels in a half a year time. So combining all of this and coming back to the original title of my talk, Regional Development, the Impact of Migration Policies. I talked about all the problems here, about all the issues here, the challenges here, but also about the excitement. And I hope you can see that in my phrasing, because it is a really exciting project. If we bring them all together, our ultimate goal would be to have some kind of policy dashboard, as we call it. So getting all the data in, and hopefully something comes out, which is really, and maybe not something, hopefully, but I think it will lead to something. Had to be a little bit stronger, but it's still difficult. It leads to something that policymakers could actually use to improve regions in Europe. Well, thank you. And then I'll introduce the next speaker, Dilek Yildiz. Yeah, she does it by herself, I think, today. So thank you all.
Thank you, Peter. Also, welcome from my side. I will go back to the methodological presentations a bit after Peter's nice presentation. And I'm going to talk about migration flows by age and education attainment. It's a joint work with Guy Abel, who is also at IIASA, International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis, and Hong Kong University. So you heard about Maciej and Jisoo this morning about the migration estimates, how they can now cost migration, how can we get this data on a timely basis especially, and also all the problems, which I will also mention a little bit. But now I'm going to talk about how we can break down this migration flows by age and education attainment and sex. So we will go a bit further in this direction. To start with, in 2022, the population of 20 EU countries, as well as the EU total population, has increased, which was it's been increasing from 1960s steadily, so it's not a big surprise. But what's also happened was in the last 10 years or so is that in the same period, more deaths happened than the births. And this brings us to migration as the main component of population growth in the region, which here you can see in the blue line. It's been positive all this period that we see from 1990 until 2022, but it's been as you can see, the orange line natural change has gone below zero around between 1910 and 2010 and 2014. That brings us to migrants and who is coming to this region. And since they are the main component of the population change, then 5.1 million immigrants moved to EU in 2022. By the way, this I took from Eurostat, published just in 27th of March. Also shows that the data is a bit lagging behind, which shows the importance of doing nowcasting if you wanted to get the information on a timely basis. So in 2022, 5.1 million immigrants arrived to EU from non-EU countries, and at the same time, 1 million people emigrated from EU to non-EU countries. Of course, it matters who are these people, and they both have have both short-term and long-term impacts on the population of the EU when we look at it. The main components of demography, age, sex, country of origin, educational attainment, ethnicity, religion, and other characteristics of migrants are affecting human behavior, as we know, and especially fertility, health, and their migration outcomes, which have long-term impacts on the population size, as well as the characteristics and where they locate in the EU, in which countries and which regions. But also these, especially educational attainment and country of origin, impact their integration to the host country, and especially integration to the labor force when we talk about the development, which is an important point we need to look at. So what do we do, and why do we do it again? It's, as you heard this morning, data on migration is plentiful, but that needs to be harmonized, and we need to find a way to combine all this information. But also characteristics of migrants are essential to study the impact of migration in the past, how they contribute to the development of the regions, and also to produce consistent and meaningful national and regional scenarios. We know that the censuses are the main sources and they are reliable, but they are subject to missingness and inconsistent definitions, especially if we look at the past migration flows. There have been a lot of work on migration data and migration research and characteristics of migrants, but they are mostly limited to migrant stocks, and mostly by World Bank colleagues. We have migration flows, observed flows or estimated flows published by national statistics offices, but they are rarely available outside of the rich countries. For example, in Eurostat, you can find this kind of information. And there are global bilateral flows by sex, but they are missing the age and education dimension that we are looking at here. And what do? We apply random forest models to estimate immigration and emigration flow proportions by age, sex, and education attainment between 1990 and 2019. This will inform our projections and scenarios in the future in the project. And why do we model we model proportions, and we use them to disaggregate the flows by Abel and Cohen, and which also has the time frame from 1990 to 2020. And of course, when we model migration flow characteristics, we rely on the theories and the literature. They mostly relate to the economic and development measures of the origin and destination countries, as well as the aspirations and capabilities of migrants. And to name a few, for example, we know that migration is very selective, especially for age and education. And from 1980, Rogers and Castro showed this nice migration age schedules, which holds for also internal and international migration. We know that most of the migration happens at the younger ages, especially during labor force age, and these people migrate with their younger kids. And then there is again a bit of peak at the retirement age groups. When we look at the education and skills, we also know from literature that especially low educated migrants, they move to shorter distances and also to countries where there is already an established diaspora. This reduces their costs and risks of migration. And on the other hand, people with higher education and higher skills, they have higher capabilities and higher aspirations, and then they don't necessarily rely on these networks to find jobs and make their livelihood in other countries. So they go to more diverse destination countries. And as I mentioned, most of the theories rely on look at the development and economic growth of countries as the determinant of migration. Here we also see that this nice figures from Heine Haas, the immigration is increasing by the development increases, but the immigration and the immigration has an inverse U shape with the both development and the GDP increase. So having all these theories and literature in mind, we identified several data sources to use as predictors in our models. Of course, there are many more predictors, especially used in growth models, such as the physical and the cultural distance between two countries, and so on. And also we have the push factors, as mentioned by Peter. But here we were looking at to predict the proportions for more than 180 countries. So we relied on data sets that are globally available and for this time for period that we are interested in. So for this results I'm going to show you in a minute, we relied on these sources like population sizes and proportions by age, sex, and education, Human Development Index, gross domestic product, proportion of migrants to account for the diaspora effect, old age dependency ratio, life expectancy at birth to look at the structure of the population, and also the proportion of illiterate population. This is especially relevant for the countries which have lower educated population at higher, especially in the beginning of our period in the 1990s, because people may not have formal education, but if they are literate, this already gives them a bit of capabilities to migrate. On our dependent variable, we use the proportions of immigration and emigration from IPOM's international database. We collected data from 74 countries from 1990 and 2016. There were a few more countries available, but we filtered some countries based on the number of observations and the missingness. And we use 5-year age groups, starting from the broad age group and the 75-year age group. And as Maciej and Jisoo mentioned, the data is not harmonized. It's harmonized, but they have different definitions. So the migration intervals changed between 1 and 11 years. But what we estimate is 5-year migration intervals. So here is our framework for immigration, but we use the same for immigration as well. We start with the migration flows. Here you can see the 2015 summed for all destination countries for females and males. Then we apply our first random forest model, and we disaggregate this by age groups, as you see here. And then we apply a probabilistic version of the Rogers-Castro model to smooth this age group because we are going to use them for the projections, and there is no evidence that the migration proportion of a 37-year-old should be higher than 38-year-old. So we assume smooth the age distribution. And then finally, we apply our age and education model, and we further disaggregate this age groups by 4-year education levels. For under 15, we assume under 15 category because people are still in education, and then up in the 15 to 19, we assume the first 3 education levels, and finally from age 20, we allow them to go assign for education levels. If we look at the results a bit, and here we have 5 countries, example countries for immigration age proportions. And as our models were able to capture this different age patterns, especially if you look at South Africa in the middle, most of the immigrants arriving to South Africa were more focused on the younger age groups around 20, and then it drops significantly and reaches to 0 very fast. Whereas in the other countries, there is a bit of a larger window of age people coming to those countries. Here you may also see in the last age group, we see a little bit of peak. This doesn't mean all these countries receive retirement migration, but it's probably coming from our broad age group here. And when we looked at the age and education proportions, we see more variation. And as expected, the countries which have themselves have a higher proportion of highly educated people also attract a bit highly educated migrants, and also these are on the left side. On the right side, also people migrating from here are more educated. And especially when we look at United States and Australia, here we see more post-secondary educated and secondary educated people arriving to the country. And if you look at South Africa and Turkey, we see less people in this category, lower proportions in these categories. By the way, these both figures are related to 2015 and 2019, which I forgot to say. Especially for Turkey migration, it's may be affected, but the Syrian migration that happened regularly. And also here we see another thing here is as the people age, we see, of course, the proportion of lower age group education levels are increasing. And we did some validation exercises as we do in statistics, and compared predicted and observed proportions, which worked well. And also we compared our age model results with the Eurostat data. And here we also received a good correlation. The main differences were in this first large age group 0 to 14. But we believe that our estimates are doing fine. Sometimes, especially in IPOMS data, this age group had a really high migrant proportions. It may be also related to some data collection methods, or maybe writing the age wrong, but there were really high proportions in this age group. So what do we plan to do next? As you have heard from Leo and my other colleagues, we look at, of course, EU countries in detail. Here we have 182 countries, and we extended it to 229 countries using regional averages, but we have only the immigration and immigration proportions. So we need to go back, we will continue to update this model to estimate the bilateral proportions. And also we were limited by the number of covariates because we needed them for all these 182 countries. But when we focus on EU, now we can use a lot of data from Eurostat and Census 2021 and LFS data and other sources, which are also connected to regional development or characteristics of regions. And we hope to get a bit improved results using this data, and hopefully the next time when we have an event, I will be able to present you bilateral migration flows. So thank you, and I will hand to Anne-Catherine again.
Thank you, Dilek. And thank you for tuning in so far. As of now, we're a bit running ahead of schedule, but we will take a break, and It will be, I think, 15, 20 minutes instead of 10 minutes. You might see some panelists pop into the screen to do some sound tests, but please take some coffee in the break, and we will see you back here at 11 o'clock. Thank you.
You're going to, and it's recording now. Okay, thank you so much. I think we'll start in roughly a minute or so. So just click it off and then we'll start in a minute. Thank you.
We'll stop sharing in a minute so everyone can see all the panelists together.
I think we can start. We had a little bit of a longer break, and I think most of the people are still with us, and even more people hopefully will show up. So welcome to the panel, welcome to the audience. I'm really honored that I can host this today, live from Copenhagen from our improvised studio. Today, so we had a lot of more academic, talks, talk about methodology, talk about data, talk about what we're going to do with this brilliant project. But now we'd like to do something else, and we'd like to engage with the audience, but also with experts from different sectors and also different policymakers, etc., to engage this problem, to tackle this problem from bottom up, and focus on the impact of migration coming from sending and receiving regions. So I'm looking forward to this because this is actually what Premium EU is about. It's not only about science, it's about connecting both worlds and improving Europe, basically. Well, in this panel, we have five brilliant guests. Louise Ling Boyerson. It's always really difficult to pronounce all the names, so sorry in advance. I looked at the LinkedIn webpage, and I think it's really brilliant. You could see the enthusiasm there, and you could also see it in her CV that she started out really small with, I think, biology and then the environment, nature, and then building up generally. And now she's on top and leading a lot of brilliant projects in a region she will tell us something about that today, what they did there. The second one is Christian Breur. I hope I pronounced it right again. I will stop saying this all the time. Urban planner for state and also municipalities. And I think he also did a little bit of research, of course, on quality of life elements. So he's also a great person, to show his light on all kinds of developments in regions within different countries. And we have Pavel Chilninsky. He's the head of, and I have to say it right, of course. Let me check. The president of the board of European Rural Development Network. I also had a look at that website, and I think it's amazing how many projects you have, what kind of people you're working on. I've been in the field for a long time, involved in many rural development projects, etc. So great to have you on board as well. Another guest, Tuba Birsan. Really honored that she is here. I saw you a while ago in I think another meeting live from Brussels, I think it was, also on migration. And I was really struck by the things you said, all the research you have done, the data you have gathered. You really have a good opinion, and you can really take us further along this path. So I'm really glad you are here today. And of course, Leo. Leo sitting in front of me, actually, but now I see him on the screen as well. We could shake each other's hands. Leo is the former director of NIDI, the Dutch Interdisciplinary Institute on Demography, and he's also a professor at Groningen University. I'm also based in the same town, so we see each other more often. And he's the initiator of this project, and also the leader of this project. So welcome to you as well. Everybody has seen him. So to warm it up a little bit, I'd like maybe we start with Louise, Pavel, and Christian. Maybe start with Louise. And and talk a little bit about, to warm it up, what kind of experience you have with demographic changes. So for me, it's not only about people leaving, but also people maybe coming in the region. So what kind of experience do you have with that?
I would say in the regional municipality of Bornholm, we have a long history of a declining population and a history of a skewed demographic, how could I say, well, a lot of old people and too few young people. And so, and in that part, we have a lot of experience with strategies working in two ways, I would say. On the one part, trying to attract new people to the society and to the island, and on the other part, adapting to being fewer people and cutting down on our service to the public.
So those are also the main problems you're sketching now, that livability is under stress?
Yes, I would say so. And I, and I believe that maybe, which is interesting here, is that maybe we don't have brain drain actually, because a lot of the newcomers, new people are actually well educated, and people who want to, well, they seek Bornholm because we have a lot of other attractive elements like nature and culture and so on, but we are getting less and less people, and that's what really are pressing the economy of the municipality.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Do you see this as well, Christian? Oh, sorry, I'm muted.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's basically the same story, although, but thanks for the invitation, by the way, and also the effort of trying to create a dashboard for our policymakers. I think it sounds hard, but we could really use it. So to that end, I wish you the best of luck. But we are also an island municipality like Bornholm, but not quite as isolated as Bornholm, as we have a bridge to Zealand and is situated not too far from the capital, and will also in a few years see a bridge to Germany. But we do see that it is a problem. Our population is around a bit less than 60,000 this year, and we have a population loss last year to this year. It was 500 people leaving, and each and every year since the past 15 years has been a couple of hundred people leaving. So yeah, that is the same story. But we also do, and I was. The presentations earlier made me think of that we also do receive a lot of migrant workers, a lot of Poles and Ukrainians working here, coming. I think at least around 500 working in agriculture. We also have, as I mentioned, there are bridge building projects all around us these years, and we have a lot of Italian and Romanian workers living here. And we also do have a settlement policy where we try to attract, I'm sure, like any other Danish municipality, we would like to attract young Danish educated families, preferably from Copenhagen. And recent research has shown that I think it was around 0.05% of those we receive are young, well-educated people from municipalities. Wow. So yeah. This is the situation here.
And the people are leaving, they are mostly young. We talked about brain drain. Louis said, well, there's more going on, but this is the main problem, or for you, getting that word out?
Yeah, young people tend to leave. Like we have the youngsters are really below national average here, and we have the elderly people are very much more than average, and specifically in a village that I work with an urban renewal program, we have a third of the people there are above 60 years of age. A third of the people there, and that's like 10% more than the national average. So that's and that is of course a huge problem as we have to face. That we have decreasing tax revenues, and we see budget cuts all the time.
Yeah, hopefully have some solution for that as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Pavel, could you tell us something, what you see, because you work in a lot of rural development projects throughout Europe? What kind of trends are you seeing? What kind of trends are the members of your
Yeah,
operation looking at?
yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. And I would like to bring a bit overview of rural situation, the rural areas, not only in Poland, but in the whole, I guess, Central Eastern Europe. And of course, there's like the trend is the same as in every country in the European Union. However, for a long time, this year we have 20th anniversary of enlargement, Eastern enlargement of EU. So we are observing those 20 years and the perspective of the also the opening the markets, job markets, and we see that like for the first 10 years we were considered in the Central Eastern Europe as like quite young populations in comparison to the EU 15 countries. Now this trend is reversed, and we see that we have a big pressure of aging, the first thing, and the second is of course the pressure of the migration, like that, not only to the EU countries, as our Danish colleagues mentioned. We have a lot of migrants from not only from Poland, but like the whole countries of Eastern Europe, Eastern Central Europe, going to the Western countries, and recently we also see quite a big shift from the young people moving to the bigger country, to the bigger cities. Yeah, of course. However, this is like not always a permanent migration. Yeah, so like they are starting to migrate for the job, maybe for like some time, and also to study to get education. But they are not staying at the cities, which is also the policy of the housing policy, of course, and high prices of housing. However, in general, we see the situation when we have of course migration to the other countries, migrations to the cities by the young people. And of course, big trends of a peri-urbanization, which is, like the settlement in the, let's say, 50 to 100 kilometers from the biggest cities, which are visible since the big investments on the infrastructure, roads, and the commuting possibilities. So this is the situation. I guess this, like in the economic and the trends and the demographic trends, shows that in the next years there will this situation will remain. Of course, the biggest pressure is on the eastern part of Poland. So that's why immigration, like the migrants from other countries, are very important and more important for Poland and our countries.
That's also one of the case studies in our project. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's great to hear that all of you are talking about projections and demographics. So you kind of use some of our research in general in your policy predictions. So maybe switch to, could you say something about general trends in the following years? We've heard the other people. Do you recognize this? What is coming on? What do they have to wait for? What is coming up?
Thanks. Let me also start again, like for the invitation. Thanks a lot. It's really nice to be here, and I think the project is amazing. So very much aligned with what has been said, but I would like to draw attention to also some things that we do not say. So we do know the facts about what's going on. We are talking about aging. We are talking about the age of migration that's being pronounced a lot. And we are talking about skills everywhere and the migration pact and the local and national policies. However, I think it's important to rephrase the assumptions about what we mean by many of the concepts that we use interchangeably. Yes, the world, particularly EU, is getting older. Like in 80s, the expectation of, let's say, the percentage of 65 plusers was around 20%, but in less than 50 years, we expect 50% increase. So the number is estimated to be more than 30%. So it is good to live longer, but the part that is prolonged is not the active part. On the contrary, what happens around or after the retirement age. So yes, we are getting older. However, we have to remember that the, in a way, speculative myths about migrants having very high fertility rate is also questionable, because many studies show that, particularly towards the second and the third generation, their fertility rates converges to the native population. So yes, the first generations have more children, so they are good for the aging population, but on the other hand, we teach them to be like us, so the fertility rate increases. So what I'm saying is that yes, the incoming workforce is extremely important and it will be the fact, but it is not going to be the ultimate solution to our problems, because, you know, I'm not talking about the societal aspects. And secondly, we are also talking a lot about the skilled and attracting more skilled people. However, like many studies, like very recent report by CEDAFOP, also the Commission, shows that we don't need only highly skilled people. Yes, skills are very important, but we use it interchangeably with this high skills. But no, we are really needing more people and workforce in low skilled jobs, in craft jobs, as well as mid-skilled. So that is also something that we have to remember, because skill is very much linked to desirability. Like there are wanted migrants or migrant populations, but on the contrary, we have to remember that our needs are way more diverse than we anticipate. And final point that I'd like to make is the overseen linkage between the demographic dynamics and the labor market dynamics, because we assume that automation will change everything. Yes, it's going to have a significant impact, like digitalization and the needs and the dynamics of the labor force. But on the other hand, we've seen during the COVID what happened with the food pickers and the fruit and vegetable pickers. So yes, at one hand, yeah, many sectors will be hugely impacted with everything, but on the other hand, our basic needs stay the same. So yes, we have to consider and, let's say, think about what is going to change, but what is at hand and stable and the minimum requirements for our daily livings. I think it's also important to keep in mind that that is also there. To cut it short, I have to say that we are going to need more migrants. That's the fact. Like in lay's terms, who's going to pay my pension? Because we are not keeping the social security in the piggy banks. That's one hand. But on the other hand, I think it's not only about the needs of the host societies. I think what is very nice about Premium is as well, it is considering the sending, you know, like areas, because it is a dynamic process, and because of the data as well. What we know is always from the perspective of the host communities or the receiving communities. However, this is very broader. So I think we have to think multidimensional, and we have to acknowledge the diversity even within the challenge. But I think what is being said is pretty accurate in a way that we have, this is the fact that is expecting us in general.
Yeah, thank you so much. No, I think that's exactly what we're aiming to do, and we all know it's really difficult. Lea, would you like to respond to this? Maybe you have something to add, like the big challenges ahead in demographic sense.
Yes, well, let me begin by thanking all panelists to participate in this meeting. Your input is extremely important to us. I mean, for scientists, I mean, we need to make a quantum leap from research to policy action. That is explicitly the goal by making this dashboard. But we need what policymakers need. And so we will hopefully be engaged with policymakers and researchers throughout the project. So I'm extremely happy that you are here and maybe follow us along the road the coming period. That's my first statement. Second, I think there's a couple of very interesting statements made by people from the regions where actually there is an experience of population dynamics leading to indeed decline. And in a sense, in a sense, the project is like sort of trying to kill two birds with one stone, as the English say, because we have both migration as well. It's an issue in Europe, and we have indeed vulnerable left behind regions as another issue. And now in this project, we try to combine them and get sort of, well, minus times minus might be plus in a sense, you might say that. So it is really a challenge. Well, reacting to some of the experiences by Louise and Christian, but also by Pavel, I mean, we have to take the sort of the broad and also sort of reflected by Tuba. We have to take the broad development of sort of a stagnating European population into account. So we should not promise, and also not in a project, that somehow regions outside of the core areas will be able to grow. Maybe some will do. It could be by sort of specific circumstances in regions, by infrastructure or whatever. And some, well, it's always the case that some sort of communities, even in declining regions, are growing. That's also our experience in the Netherlands, for instance. But in general, we have to live with the situation of a stagnating population and an aging population in Europe. And we have to adjust our policies to that. Given that, how do we sort of foster well-being and livability in these regions? And it is not necessarily by trying to improve, sort of increase population. It may not always, or most of the time, not be possible, but by trying other policies. And that is something difficult, because as both Louise and Christian say, we have declining resources because of declining population. So yeah, well, how to deal with less resources in such a situation. But that is to some extent also, well, what we are looking for in this regard.
I think this is a great angle, actually, to give it back to Pavel, Christian, and also Louise. So you were talking about improving, getting more people in, but what if that's not happening? What are you going to do? Do you have any thoughts on that, Christian?
Well, yeah, I do, but I have a lot of thoughts, but what I see is that my politicians, they don't really have any, unfortunately. There's this optimism about, they all like to share anecdotes about a family coming from Copenhagen, moving into our municipality, and they all talk about it, and I think it's all of them the same story that they just like to share, and they're really enthusiastic about it. And what they also like to talk about is opportunities. There's so many opportunities here, but what they are actually doing is, I think they are really sort of saying, okay, we're just treating all areas, so our municipality is the same, and you can buy a house in a village everywhere, but as an urban planner, we do know that, and coming from a fairly strong urban planning tradition in this country, at least, we do know that places are different. Like some places are much more economically or socially or culturally viable than other places. But what we do here, we just treat them the same. I'm not sure if it's if I need to say this, but as in Nordic countries, or in Denmark at least, the municipalities are suppliers of great many services, like social services, which are also physical, like in a sense that you have to elder care, you have to get like a person supplying elder care to drive out to the elderly people. So, and what my concern is here is that we are sort of spreading our resources in a very, very thin layer throughout the municipality, whereas as an urban planner, we should treat different places differently. And I should like to propose that we, for instance, say, okay, this village here, we see it's really well located, and it has as a critical number of inhabitants, we should support these villages by all means. And this could probably mean that there are 2 other villages that we nearby that we should not support, and thereby gradually working for removing these villages and sort of trying to create good livelihoods, good quality of life some places, but not all places. But this is not politically viable yet.
No, exactly, because it requires hard choices, really difficult choices also for constituents. Do you see the same, Pavel? Would you support this idea of not spreading it thin out, but really focusing on specific areas, or?
Yeah, I deeply agree with Christian, because this is also the matter of, I guess, every of the country and each of the regions has the same problems, and this is not let's say politically well seen to decide that some parts of the region of the country will not support because the aging trends are negative, and they will remain negative, because like what we have, of course, and what we stress often is that that we cannot, reverse the trends. So we have to make ourselves used to live in that way, that some of the parts of the country, they will no longer be let's say demographically viable. Yeah, the second thing is, which is well seen for example in the Nordic countries, that like the more wealthy the inhabitants are, they make like the more conscious and like they're more aware of the choices, the places where they want to live. That's why there is like the very strong movement from, for example, from big cities to the suburbs, yeah, which is like the also connected to those combination of technical, social, economic infrastructure that is already there. And this is also the reason of the migration in between the countries. So what we're facing in the Central Eastern Europe, but in Poland you see that those trends are not that strong anymore, because also because of the big changes in Poland and Polish economy, but also a big aware of this even small municipality authorities. They are aware they have to invest not only in the like the technical infrastructure, but they are now very, very active in providing those social infrastructure, even investing a lot in culture. And like in Poland, there is a city, Wrocław, southern western city that started first to invest in culture as like one of the let's say measures for making the city more viable. But from Polish perspective, we know that eastern part of the Poland will go old, and this is typical trend, and it is irreversible. So some of the small municipalities will face a big issues concerning the how to rebuild the local policy, yeah, like development.
Exactly. So if I understand you correctly, so maybe some focused investments as well, maybe cultural things. You also need to know when you're declining, so you have to prepare for that. Is that? And I think Tuba and they are really eager to jump in, but I want to go briefly to Louise as well. So do you see the same? Do you envision the same? So really targeted investments in, let's say, welfare or cultural to really promote certain areas? Would that be something?
Yes, I see exactly the same things as both Pavel and Christian has talked about. But I would also say that we are also we're trying to follow the trends that we see, of course, and one of the things that is how we try to adapt to a lesser population is, of course, automation, technology, digitalization, and so on. So and this includes our welfare areas in the municipality, that so fewer people can do the same, or that the technology can take over. But this of course demands other kind of competences in our labor forces. So we are making this adjustment or adaptment in the municipality, I would say, and concerning on the whole island, as Christian is talking about, I would say we're closing down some of our facilities and services, but and leaving villages or cities in the island, but we also try, on the other hand, to make other kind of investments, doing good for other things. For example, we have we call it the Green Wave, where we invest in the nature and in the recreative infrastructure on the island, making it more attractive to live in the small cities where maybe there's no school anymore or a library. But when you live there, then you have other kind of good things for you that you can. There's a path just outside your house, and then you can walk into the forest or something. So we try to build the attractiveness with other elements.
Okay,
About the culture, of course, also.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So if you divide it, and I think first is with the skills. So maybe Tuba can reflect on that as well. You were talking about this as well, Tuba, about different types of skill. We do not only need highly skilled people, but also lower skilled people for other types of jobs. Would it be advisable to, I don't know, to develop or to organize a region according to their needs? Can you say anything about this? I know it's a difficult question.
Yes, it is. It is. So, but I guess we have some examples to show that it might work. Like just on top of my head, I remember a couple of examples, for instance, from Hungary. If I pronounce the name correctly, I think it was Nagypoli or something. So there was a small village where they really promoted eco-agriculture and the tourism, so sustainability, and it worked pretty well because they reversed their decline, but also they attracted more people. But on the other hand, EU has been investing a lot in the smart villages, where on the contrary, they're trying to increase, or let's say invest in the technological advancement, accessibility, whatever. But I do think that, like what we have to bring into the picture is related to needs is the community engagement. I think it's very important for rural areas as well, not only let's say the labor market needs or demographic needs. I think success relies a lot on not only the policies on a local or higher level, but also on the community engagement, what people really want and how engaged they are. Because most of the good or the best practices, good examples that we are talking about is in general really bottom-up approaches. So people who are living in the community also want to change things. So it's not really like, let's make a decision and change things. And the skills is also really relevant to the assets, not only the needs, because you might have a community with different cultural or agricultural or I don't know, so technological assets as well, or historical even. So I think it's a kind of like having the best utility function and optimizing everything, like with your needs, so what you propose, because attractiveness is about what you can propose to these people to create demand, but on the other hand, it is based on the needs, what you really want to have. So in short, I think it's a very nice way to wrap up and say that, like one for all solution will not work, but we can really have more targeted needs-based. And I think this where the society supported and more engaged communities will make things work in terms of both skills and in general demographics.
Yeah, so it's actually not the higher, lower, but the soft skills who make it in the end. That's a really nice conclusion. I also saw a question pop up, and I want to say it early on, but this is spot on actually. If you have questions, please put them in the chat, and we have some time available after in let's say 10 minutes time to answer some questions. Leo, would you like to maybe also reflect? Do you have anything to add? What could regions do based on the research Premium EU has been doing in the last years? Any ideas?
Yeah, well, I mean, I fully agree with the spirit of the discussion so far. Each region or even village, city is different. And that is also what we try to sort of incorporate in our project. And each region has its own history, its own strengths, and in thinking about the future, we should start with these strengths of regions. And one of the strengths is indeed, I guess, the spirit of the community, as Tuba says, and others that will agree. There's a lot of potential in the people, and what my experience as someone who has been from the research side, sort of involved in projects on population decline in the Netherlands, is that I mean, the community wants could have very strong ideas and engage in sort of a bottom-up approach to deal with that. Often, sort of the governments are not able to deal with that because it doesn't fit in existing programs. There is no money for that, and civil servants. Forgive me if I make a strong statement here, but are not used to that. They have their regional plans, and it may not be aligned with that. So it also means as having another attitude, both also at the government level, to use the strength of communities, and there immigrants or in-migrants may be one very strong source of new energy into the region. So I think really that is one of the avenues that we should try to go into in our project. Maybe one additional element is in our thinking we may think about migration as sort of international migration, which is a very important part of the whole thing, of course. But for regions in the country, internal migration is quantitatively much more important.
Yeah, that's a good addition, absolutely.
And so we also have to deal with young people moving to the cities. I think Christian mentioned it, and Pavel, that this is sort of urbanization of young people, and indeed suburbanization of older people moving to regions, well, not too far from the core areas, but even maybe sort of a ruralization of people, usually later in the career, to more remote places. They may be a very good resource for sort of new energy into the region.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a really valid point. And I'd like to take a different approach as well, if you allow me, because we've been here and we've talked about the problems, we've talked about some possible solutions. I think we're roughly on the same page, yeah? More direct investments, although this is going to be really hard in politics, so to make tough decisions. But let's talk about that maybe on a later time. What I also want to do, because one of the ideas behind the Premium EU is bringing policymakers and researchers together. Well, now we're in the same digital room. So Tuba, what can you offer to practitioners all around Europe?
Oh, and you know, it's not a very straightforward question to answer, but I have to say that, you know, I have been working with different, like, politicians and policymakers at different levels, and mostly around labor market and migration. And I can say that based on my experience, I always start with setting the expectations very straight from the very beginning, because what I hear the most from the policymakers is, I don't have 4 years to wait for your results, because I think policy needs really reactive approach, and, you know, like, it has to be proactive, because they have a problem, they got to solve it now or at the earliest possibility. And research, we need time for robust scientific results and design. So I think we have to remember first that, you know, like, we are not at the same pace, but it doesn't mean that it's not possible to catch up, because science is cumulative. So we are not talking when Premium now starts. I mean, just with personal connections, I know that many of those people have been working on these topics for very long years already. So there is an existing knowledge. So I guess, like, this insights from the scientific research is extremely valuable to reflect on what could be done in a better way. But we also have to understand that, you know, from the policy perspective, it is very much about the feasibility, not this theoretical implication. So they would like to see, how can I use your results? It's amazing to have a book, but what can I do with it? Mm-hmm. So I think starting the research by design, like the Premium EU does, from the very beginning, targeting to have a policy impact, you know, like, gradually, I think it is the right way to start for translating research to policy. But on the other hand, I think it's also important to remember that it is very much based on the mutual expectations, because, as I said, okay, the policymakers have expectations, but also researchers wanted to be heard. So it is not like you always have a couple of researchers here and there invited to the conferences, but when you really talk about the decision-making process, I think that would be amazing to have more perspectives and insights from the scientists. So this is the broader picture, but I think it's really important to underline that research can really bring in a lot of diversity and also these nuances in to say that we were in the commission a couple of weeks ago and we were talking about the irregularity, and the political rhetoric and the social thing about irregular migration and everything, but very few people pronounce that the major irregular migrant group in the EU are the Europeans. We are not really talking about Middle Eastern or North Africans who are irregular. Main irregular group are the intra-European migration, but we don't talk about it as if it's not a problem. So I think research can already bring in what is not maybe speculative or not easy to sell in the political rhetoric, but I guess what is also important, so we can really feed each other. And finally, I would say that I guess sometimes it is also important to remember that some problems and the challenges are chronic. And policies are usually going for acute solutions, like, okay, how can I solve it now? But I think science can bring in, how can it be sustainable to really approach this phenomena, this problem? So I think we are also talking about but not of the benefits of mobility, only benefits of the scientific insights. So the last thing that I would like to say is that I guess science can take risks, because to get the funding given, we really try to be innovative in different ways. And I think it's of great importance to communicate. That's what I will wrap up with. So we need better communication. And I think these will be translated in a better way, because I do see that the Commission itself has been investing a lot now to have a better communication with the projects, to have better impact. So it's not about the quantification, because assessment is a different issue. But I guess starting with communication and good collaboration, we are already paved the road securely.
Well, thank you. So Pavel, is that enough? If summarize it, so rigorousness of methods, longer durée, understanding what happens, communication is really important. Is that enough? Is that what you need? What do you need to help rural development people?
Yeah, I will mention, because again, I will agree with you about this is excellent note on this topic, and I would say that from the very general perspective, first is that immigration policy is not that important for the politicians that it should be. It should be like the one of the key policies, and therefore Premium EU should be like go very loud in trying to influence not only the scientific but also the policy makers, and bring them together to see that like the migration policy is one of the most important policies, and it will that importance will grow in the future. From Polish perspective, we had this for the first time, because we are very homogeneous population here in Poland. So our migration was only on the paper, I guess. And we tackled a big issue with the Ukrainian migration with we were learning out of it, and we have some very good and excellent observations out of that. In relation to the economic development of the regions and the local communities, that is like the immigrants can be the one of the key elements for the future development of some of the areas in each of the country.
And what would you need from researchers then to help you improve these type of analysis?
Yeah, first we should go very smart and lean into the observations. So like the statistics should be very regular, and I guess everything should go digital. So like we should have a great trends on the migration first, but also like the interaction with the local labor markets. This is very important, because we see that the migrants are moving to the big cities because, for example, like the competences don't match the labor market in a different area. So this is like the one of the key issue. The second thing is information about the potential migrants to the local communities, because they are like the one that is the integration aspect for the incomers. For them, it's very important to get to the, like, if they have kids, they go to school and they need to be integrated over there. If not, they need to have access to the NGOs that are already in the different areas, especially in the rural areas. So like this information should flow very, very quickly. And
Okay,
not
can I also ask Louisa, because she's also,
Yeah,
sorry
sure.
to interrupt you, but
Of
Louisa, what do you think research can add to this discussion, to the analysis? What could we do as a challenge?
I would say I have another concern that we haven't not addressed so much today, that I would like the researchers to look into, and that's the rising gap between the trust in the people to the municipality or to the politicians and to the civil servants. And this gap is becoming bigger and bigger as I see it. There's a lot of trends going on, you know all about it. But I would say, as Christian talked about, our local politicians, they have really, really big decisions to make, and they are. It's very difficult to them to stay firm on this decision on closing or how to attract new people. In Bornholm, we have a big project, Energy Island, and connecting the island with the windmills in the sea and so on. And this has a lot of impact on the society, and people, they lose faith or trust in the civil servants and in the politicians in these processes, developing the society and cutting down the service. So how do we maintain our democracies with a high level of trust in these processes?
And I saw you nodding as well, Christian. But so if I look at this, it's the same thing researchers are also struggling with, trust. I mean, is science just an opinion, to phrase Trump in a bad way? So what do you think about that, Christian? Could research add to this trust?
Yes, I'm very much in agreement with Tuba. I think we really need scientific results here. And that having been said, there is this Trump post-factual trend, explaining the election of Trump and possible re-election of Trump and Brexit and so on. And at least in this country, I think we have on the national level very strong-minded politicians who very much disregard facts, which is really, really a bad thing. But still, at the bottom of my heart, I believe in facts and I believe in science, and I really hope that you can deliver us some good quality scientific results, not only statistical, as Pavel talked about, but also qualitatively. And we would really take them and try to use them. And if I may challenge you a bit in this Premium EU project, because I listened to the presentations earlier, and I thought it was a bit maybe slightly too much on methodology and what I would like to hear, and because you're also already just started, but I should like to hear some findings also. That's would be the really interesting thing for me. I can live with some methodology, but findings would be really, and just take your time with the findings. We can wait, but deliver us at some point really high quality findings. Yeah, thanks.
It's great that I'm the host, so I can deflect this to Leo. So what kind of findings? When do we have finding? Now that's a me question. But of course we will deliver findings. That's absolutely true. The policy does, but in the projection. But Leo, would you like to?
Well, no, Christian, indeed it's a challenge, but that is explicitly the idea of the project. But we are currently, I mean, it's really work in progress, and some say, well, don't disturb a breeding chicken. I think we do have something to say already, and this panel is already, I think, a great opportunity to meet. It is extremely important to be in contact. And indeed, what Tu has remarked, that the benefits of migration, it's also the benefits of scientific input into the whole process. And this is what we explicitly want with this dashboard. It should work. So we work hard to get something running, and we really hope that not by the end of the project, but down the road in the project, that we will have something to show and communicate with you and say, well, is this something that works? If not, what should we change on that?
I have a follow-up question on that from the
May I add
audience.
one
Yeah.
thing in general? I mean, it is of two sides of the coin in a sense, research and policy making. We both have to learn to adjust to a situation. Researchers are often very well in creating problems. Well, you may say this, but it's more complicated and so on, and not very well in solving problems in a sense. But we try to make another step, indeed, to create something that is really sort of giving additional insight and tools to policymakers. And on the basis of sound research and sound facts. So that maybe the impossible that we are trying, but I mean, it's something we really do want to do in this project. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a follow-up question from the audience. So one of them is asking, one of the components of your project seems to be a regional development policy. I guess the policy dashboard, which we talked about. How precisely do you see the possibility of attracting migrants to the regions in need? So what comes out of it? How concrete is it? Can you elaborate a little bit on that, Leo, as well?
Well, as I said in the beginning, I'm not sure if policies direct, sort of aimed at attracting people is the best way to go. It is about strengthening well-being, livability, and that may attract people in some sense. So there is an element in that, but I think if we only focus on policies, only trying to attract sort of young people, that we will not have a lot of options in our basket in the end.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. And also another question maybe for Louise, I think. Maybe the other practitioner can also say something about it. But so we talked about people moving away, brain drain, stuff like that. And at one point, so what are the tipping points to say? So when does a region become unlivable or anything like that? So, I mean, you see it gradually going down population-wise, but at one point it stops being livable. Or so can you say something about that? Are there any indicators for that? How do you monitor this?
I don't have a figure or a number of when the region not is livable, but I would say that we usually see, as Christian is also talking about, that when we remove some of our service facilities like schools and maybe the local shop closes and so on, then there's a tipping point where the region or the city is no longer livable. And precisely where that level is actually not very well defined, because it depends on the people living there, or if they succeed in attracting other people with new skills. I would say some of our cities have developed that maybe people with local craftsmen or creating, well, they can maybe move into houses which is not very well maintained, but they create a new area or space, or is something that is attractive, and then they reverse the development, or how can you say so? So it's not actually very easy to say what is the exact level, because it depends on luck or
okay. No, fair enough. Anybody else wants to add to this? Oh yeah, yes, Christian. Yeah, Leo as well. Christian.
Well, I think as a Dane, I don't think we yet experience that regions aren't livable. Like, of course, I think you should probably ask some of our fellow Scandinavians, like where you see really remote regions, where I think it's probably much harder to maintain sort of social standards and welfare for locals. But we do have seen some really strong reforms here, where we went from like 300 municipality to 100, and we also had hospital reforms, health reforms, and what is the problem in this country, at least right now, is like maintaining medical clinics in remote areas. That's really a problem, because doctors, they don't want to move out. And we also see, at least we have a local hospital in Guldborgsund, and it is I think they have staff shortages. I think they are missing like 100 people there. So it's yeah, I should really be careful about my words here, but the treatment you can get there is not as good as in bigger cities. So that's also part of the problems that we have. We can't really hire the technicians or the doctors to provide like healthcare services. So in some senses, we do see some tendencies towards making this area less inhabitable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, thank you. We also have another question, but that's kind of a technical question about serial migration, how we integrate this. So I guess we have to deflect this to one of our researchers who can be in contact with you, Monica. Yeah, I think it's almost time actually. So if no other, or Leo wants to say something, well, some final words for Leo then, and then we'll summarize it.
I also wanted to react to this final statement about sort of making investments. I mean, given the fact that as was remarked already, that there is such diversity in local communities and villages, also in places or regions with population decline, I was always struck by the fact that sometimes in one sort of domain of sort of government interventions, it is about enormous amounts of money. It's about investments, about health, and of course that's needed. At the same time, for some reason, then because of lack of resources, then the things that are, to my opinion, are very important for maintaining sort of a livable community are tiny compared to these huge investments that are sometimes necessary. But you see often that they sort of are the first to be scrapped from the budget. As an example, which is at the national level, but with a financial crisis, at least in my country, the Netherlands, I think in Germany it was different, but okay, we had to we were sort of cutting budgets enormously. What happened first was the arts, green investment, the things that make life a little better, even in bad circumstances. So, and the budget reductions were so tiny compared to the billions of reductions elsewhere that could have been made. So I don't understand why, if it's about livability, sometimes I think that Louise also said that if you invest sort of strategically, it may not be too costly in a sense, and it might be strategically very important for keeping the community a healthy and viable community together. So that's one thing that I would like to sort of is one of my reactions to the discussion.
And I saw a lot of nodding faces, so I think we all agree on this. I think we've come to a natural end of this. I see that one of the questions has already been answered by our team, so thank you for that. I thank you all. I think we had a brilliant discussion, not only about the problems some of the regions are facing and the problems and challenges the researchers also see, but also about, I don't know, some solutions about how we can work together and how can we help each other with. I think everybody has the same goal, and that's making regions, making livable, and make lives of people better. I think that's what is binding us together, and I think we should really collaborate. And yeah, we hope to contribute with this project as well, of course. So thank you so much, Louise, Pavel, Tuba, Leo, and Christian. I hope we'll see you soon. I hope we can invite you for another brilliant discussion. I learned a lot from you today. So Have a good day also to the audience, and let's meet up. And if you have any questions, please contact us. We will also be at the Week of the Regions in Brussels in October, where we're probably going to do a workshop with two of our sister projects, doing some case studies and also some decision making also for policymakers. And we'll have some other events planned as well, so have a look at our website. For now, as I said before, thank you so much and have a brilliant day. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
Thank you very much.